Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to talk a little bit today about why exposures after a certain amount of time don't bring us additional help. Now, this is something that is really not known by a lot of people. And what I'm talking about here is people often think that if you just keep doing exposures, both the person suffering and the therapist, that will get in there. Well, it won't, because it will initially. But what then happens is if the person is scared of something, they've got an irrational belief like something like, I am a terrible person if I have done such and such act. No amount of exposures will ever get rid of the fear there because of the belief that they believe they are a terrible, bad person. So that is crucial. So you can do as many exposures there, keep going, but the person will keep triggering the anxiety cycle because of that belief that they have. Other versions of that are things that exposures are tricky to get into, and you have to have a look at how the person's perspective is in relation to the thing that they fear. That may be, for example, in the cases of existential OCD with solipsism, for example, and various existential themes. It can often be you won't be able to replicate the scenario to expose to, and it's more of a thing on their perspective as well as how they're coming at the thoughts and the fear. So that's another part of the problem. So we have to be aware of that, and when you're someone suffering from OCD, you have to be your own therapist. That's what you're basically becoming. You're learning to become your own therapist, the best therapist for yourself. And so you do need to tell them, or whoever you're working with, whoever's coaching you, whoever your therapist is, that if you're just constantly doing exposures and it's not improving, you need to say to them, look, I'm not improving, and we need to look at some other angles. Now, that can often, they may be going from the right angle, and you do need, in certain cases, more exposures, or you do need to change your perspective, and they've been working on that with you and it hasn't budged yet. That is also the case. However, what tends to happen is the person is very much has very much done all that can be done from the path that person is taking them down. So they get to a point where if they do not understand how OCD operates further than that, the person who's helping them, then they just get sort of stuck there and they don't move and progress forward. So that's very important. Now, in relation to the actual exposures too, the exposures need to be tweaked to get in there from various angles. That is often not done. They're often sort of plainly approached rather than coming around it from various angles. That is very much the case in things like in a lot of the harm cases, it's never exposed properly enough. In various themes in relation to sexuality, again, existential, getting in there. Existential is usually not targeted properly. The exposures normally go sort of adrift and don't go right into the main problem. All different things require quite a lot of, like if you were, you've got to treat your recovery journey a bit like if you were an athlete or if you were building a business. Because if you're an athlete and you train the muscle from one angle all the time, you need to train from various other angles, or you need, if you're playing football, to learn from all different positions, all different types of kicks and angles with the ball, so that you're learning a whole range. And that's the same with OCD. You need to target things from a variation of angles. And the same as with a company, you need to sort of adjust towards the market in different ways, and not just go sort of blindly in one direction. So that's very important, and I think that relates very much to OCD, because OCD is sort of rigid. It's almost like, if we think of it a bit like a sort of antibiotic, sort of not antibiotic resistant bacteria, but a bacteria that needs various different antibiotics to hit it from all angles. So obviously, when someone's got a bacteria resistant something a bacteria that's fighting against the antibiotics, it's hit with variations of antibiotics to break it down. That is the same with OCD. We have to hit it with a lot of different things because it's stubborn and it hangs in there. Sometimes people can go along without much intervention. They might have a little bit of exposure, a little bit of CBT, and off they go in sort of some cases. But it can't be, usually what it needs is a combination of meds, a combination of breaking down beliefs, uncertainty, exposures. Some people can get away with sort of a bit of that and then further and further along. Whereas in myself, it took a long time of understanding, good understanding of unconditional self and life acceptance, tons of exposure work, and changing my relationship with anxiety and the intrusive thoughts, so they no longer gripped me in the same way that they did. And I think that's all very, very important. To realize that it is going to take time to adjust, to make those changes. You're not going to just be able to do that suddenly and just get it to snap. And so I think it's very important to know that, because then you take the pressure off yourself to get better so quickly. Usually we're moving very fast, constantly. I've got to get better. I've got to get this sorted, and we don't take enough time. It's like the late Claire Weeks said, was a great anxiety pioneer. You know, she still suffered anxiety from time and time in her dreams. And that was completely out of her control, as do I. Occasionally I notice a dream, a nightmare that sparks anxiety, and I feel that in the night. Well, that's out of my control. I don't notice it chronically in the day, but sometimes I get that in the night, especially when I've been working late and maybe drinking coffee before bed, Coke and so on, Coca-Cola there before bed. And when I've been doing that, it makes me think that I notice the anxiety kicking in at night in my sleep, but I leave it to pass and I couldn't care that it's there. And that's what Claire Weeks talks about. We're too stubborn, where I've got to have it all eliminated, every last ounce. And the problem when you do that, it grows rapidly because it knows that you want rid of it so damn hard. So that's a very important thing too. I think a very important part of my own journey was realizing that even when I was fucking anxious, I could still go about living my life and getting a lot of stuff done, till I no longer cared. Screw it, I'm anxious, I'm still going to live my life how I want to live it. And I think that's a very, very important part of the journey, which is why I coined the phrase, bring it for the ride, because that is a crucial element to the OCD recovery journey. I think that's basically what I wanted to just briefly cover on here today in a very quick Instagram live. I'll be back on and do question and answer format later in the week, where I'll be going through all your questions. So I'll see you guys then. All right, guys, take it easy.